Hello, and welcome back to Caitlin Finally is Talking About Books Again. I've been on a bit of a hiatus, but now I'm graduated. Anyway, I have been reading some books during this time. I just haven't been making videos, so I wanted to kind of say what I've read, and if I reread them, I will make a review. But for some of them, it's been so long since I've read them that I feel like I probably can't make a good review, so I'll just give an overall synopsis and kind of a little like how much I liked it and stuff like that. So, I read White Cat by Holly Black. It was so good. Like, I really enjoyed the story. We don't get a lot of like magic worlds that work like this, so I would really encourage it if you're kind of like stuck in a rut but you want something that's supernatural. This is the way to go. It's a little simply written. I think this is probably one of her first books. The writing is good. I just feel like it's probably not her best writing. But like the story is really good and the ending is just like such a twist that like highly recommend. I cannot wait to read the next one. It's about this guy who knows about the world of magic but hasn't necessarily been involved, and some shady proceedings by his family, and it's just really, really interesting. Veronica Roth wrote 2 more books, Carve the Mark and The Fates Divide. Divergent is my favorite book on the planet. I love it so much. It was really difficult for me actually to start Carve the Mark, which is the first one out of the 2 of these. Because it starts off from a very young perspective, I usually am not a huge fan of younger perspective like writing where like the character is very young, so it's just not really my thing. So it took me a little while to get into it, but once I was into it, it was really interesting. After reading Divergent, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I know the pressure must have been huge. I just really love Veronica Roth. But I can't imagine like trying to write after something that huge and follow it up with something that was really this well done. Like, it's such a different vibe, but it's so interesting. There's kind of, I don't know how to, like, there's a lot of like regular human people, and then there's some people who have kind of these powers. The main character is Akos, and he has, what is his power? See, it's been so long since I read it. The other main character, Syra, is pretty much like pain inflicting, kind of like lightning bolt pain powers. But yeah, highly enjoyed. Probably, if Divergent's like a 5 out of 5, like a 5 stars, I'd probably give these like 3.7 to 4s. I really enjoyed them, but because I was kind of comparing them to Divergent, it was a little difficult because the writing style is similar, but the story is just so different. Restore Me by Tahereh Mafi? I'm not exactly sure how to say her name, but I love her books. I was so excited when she said that the Shatter Me trilogy was going to add 3 more books. 3! Then I read this one. It wasn't my favorite. Shatter Me is my favorite book of this series because I really liked how stylized it was, and the crossouts, you know, from the first 3 books, they slowly disintegrate, and I don't think there's any in here. I really appreciate what went on in this novel. While it wasn't my favorite one, a lot of the times with these young adult trilogies, we see the 16-year-old girl conquer the government, and then we have no idea what happens after or how it's restructured, or we have a loose idea with, for some reason, we think this 16-year-old girl is part of the government now, and we see what happens when that happens. And it's really interesting, and I think gives a lot of perspective to how young Juliet is, how much it takes to be a leader outside of the rebellion, like what it looks like when you have to be a leader in a more organized fashion. And I really appreciated what was going on in the plot and how Juliet's handling this and how the other characters are handling Juliet handling this. I think Warner was one of my favorites in here just because like he does have some know-how of how this goes down, and he doesn't want to step on Juliet's feet, and he also doesn't really want to be that type of leader because his dad was. Oh, I'm like, talking about it, it's all coming back to me. Juliet has some strange stuff go down right towards the end. Oh, it's so interesting. Even though I think I'll probably prefer the first 3 even after all 6 are out, I'm very interested to see what happens with this one. Oh. Also Kenji, he's getting a book, right? Or a novella or something like that. Kenji is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, just in general. Love Kenji. He, as always, is the comedic relief, and I love that. Probably a 3.5 out of 5. But I expect the next ones to be better. I think there was just needed to have a lot of foundational stuff in this one, so that's probably why I felt a little less about it, but really excited. I bought Defy Me, and I'm hoping to read that really, really soon. Oh my gosh. I have no words for the ending of this book. This is the 5th one? Yes, because Kingdom of Ash is the 6th one. The gold cover one is the 6th one. Wish they would put numbers on it somewhere. It was so good. Every single one of these books gets better. I can't wait to read Sarah J Maas's other series, the A Court of Thorns and Roses, and she has that Catwoman one out too. I can't wait to read them. They're thick. They're hard to get through in a thickness way, especially because the writing is so pretty that like I really try to take my time reading these books, so it takes me a while. I'm reading the one about Chaol right now, Tower of Dawn. I didn't really want to read a book about Chaol that much, but I felt like it would be foundational to other things. Same way the novella is like the sword, the one with the sword on the front of the cover. I don't remember what it's called, but it was just like it integrated so well with the other books. I was like, oh, I probably should read it, and it's getting really interesting now. It took me a minute to get into it just because like I don't care what happened to Chaol that much. I do now. I care a lot now. But before, it just, yeah, I'm halfway through that right now, and I highly recommend reading it because it does get really, really good. Because obviously, I mean, she's a great author. This was so interesting. Seeing her powers like evolve every book is so interesting, and like I have all these like every place that I like just marked down because it's so good. So I'm really excited to like finish the Chaol book, Tower of Dawn, and then read Kingdom of Ash and find out what happens because I am so nervous. That's the one thing I love about these books is that we don't know the plan. Like, we assume that there's a plan, but the plans are always so much better than we assume the plans are gonna be. Like, how Aelin is gonna do something and then she does something amazing, but then when things go wrong, we have minor issues. 6 out of 5 though. So good. We All Looked Up. I don't know if this is like a super popular book. I see it a lot in bookstores, but nobody's really talked about it as far as I know. It's by Tommy Wallach, and it was super interesting. I tend to veer more towards the fantasy side and not so much towards the science fiction-y or like regular life-y books. Contemporary, it's not usually what I go for. But this was so good and it was so interesting and it's really thought-provoking. The premise is that there's this comet coming towards Earth and everyone's gonna be destroyed like really, really soon. And it follows the life of these high schoolers, and one of them has a blog that gets really popular because she's talking about like the events and has all these really great pictures, and then this student athlete who's trying to figure out like what's important in his life, who's important in his life, and like seeing how chaos unfolds. It was just like a really, I want to say like a really intuitive glimpse of humanity. That sounds like overbearing, but I feel like it's really not. Like, it is so good and I just really, really liked it. I don't know how else to say it. Like, this is, it's really pretty short. It's a fast read. Like, highly, highly encourage this one. 5 out of 5. It's just, yeah, like they find out they have 2 months to live and madness ensues. And it was just super interesting and I really, really loved it. Every single Cassandra Clare book gets better. I have nothing but praise for this. I'm reading Queen of Air and Darkness right now. I listen to these via audiobook usually because the guy who reads them has like this deep timbre to his voice and it gets really intense and it's so good. This book was so good. We find out that Emma and Julian's love could destroy them, like literally physically, and they could kind of go insane and become these monsters, and there's some big deaths in this one, so prep yourself because I wasn't really prepared. I love seeing our old friends like Simon and Clary and everybody. Like, I love seeing them as like these weird responsible adults. Seeing Julian struggle hurts my soul. This poor boy, he's like 16. It is very strange reading young adult literature when you have a good gap of time between the characters and you now. Like, when I was first started reading young adult literature, I was 15, 16, and now that I'm a little bit older, I'm just like, this poor baby. Like, I can't believe he's doing some of the stuff he's doing. And Emma is just killing it. Like, she's just so cool, but like, is just like a part of this family, and oh, if you've read this, I'm not gonna spoil it, but those 2 major deaths, one of those has destroyed me, hardcore. That's all I have to say on the matter. 5 out of 5, it's just so good. I also read The War of Art. If you're into artsy things like writing, dancing, or you have something you really want to do. Like, I think it's like, this is for people who like want to build a company, or like just, I would recommend this for anyone, but especially someone who is very interested in artsy stuff. It's a little melodramatic, not gonna lie. Like, for me, I was like, this is super interesting, and like some stuff I really needed to hear, but it gets a little intense where I'm like, really? Maybe that's because I haven't made enough stuff yet, I don't know. But I finished it literally this morning and would highly recommend it if that's like the type of thing you're into. Yeah, that's, I think, oh, no, there's more. I don't have physical copies of them because I've listened to a lot of audiobooks. I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Really good. It was a lot better than I expected it to be honest. I really like fairy tale retellings, and that's kind of what this is. It's like a very, very spinned off version of Cinderella, but there's a prince in it, and I love the prince. He's just absolutely adorable. Cinder is just like a really cool character. It's like, sister ends up being very sick, and how she deals with that, how she deals with being part cyborg. She's like, my understanding is that she is part machine, and they have like a hierarchical system based on how much machine you are. So like humans are like normal people, and then they view cyborgs as beneath them, especially those who are made of more and more mechanical parts. And I think Cinder is about a third mechanical. Like her foot is mechanical, and I think like part of her arm or something. She meets the prince, obviously, who doesn't know this, and I think that's really interesting. The evil stepmother, as per usual, is super evil. She gets sent to like this testing facility for an uncurable plague, and how she deals with that, how that goes. Like, that was also a super interesting part of the book. Cinder is probably like a 4 out of 5 for me. I really liked it, and I got like all those little like butterflies when the prince is around, and I was just, anyways. I read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This got a lot of traction on BookTube a couple years ago, if you were around on the BookTubes at that time, because he was like named like the hottest YA author. A very attractive man. The book was really good. The audiobook is like all in a Scottish accent, which was interesting. But the main character is on Mars, and he's a red, and that's like the lowest of the low in their hierarchy. Golds have it all, and they're also horrible people. And so there's this sort of like rebellion that's going on, or the inklings of a rebellion. And of course, our main character is pretty content with his life, but then he suffers a very horrible tragedy, which kind of spurns him into the revolution, as is our regular young adult setup. It was really interesting because it was very Hunger Games-y to me, but in a very different way than the Hunger Games. Like, it's like if the Hunger Games could have more than one winner and lasted forever. Forever! It lasted so long. I think they were in there for like several months. And it can get pretty graphic. It was very intense. Like, where they were stationed was very intense. I'm a big fan of like Greek and Roman mythology, and it pulled on that a lot, so I really appreciated that. I got a little tired in the middle of the Hunger Games-y part. I wanted to see more of the world, and we were kind of trapped for a little while. But seeing like the abilities that the Golds have was really interesting. Like, in that setting, you get to really see what it's like to be a Gold, and it's quite harsh and but also really interesting to see. So I really enjoyed it. I'd probably give it like a 3.5 out of 5. I think if I read the second one, I'll probably enjoy it more because we'll probably be out of that arena setting more and get to see like what goes down, and like I'd really like to see him go back to his family after that experience. That'd be a really interesting dynamic because he's had to make so many changes to his life. I really have an interesting time with the love triangle-ish type thing that's going on here. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a very interesting version of a love triangle that I've never seen done in young adult fiction before. So I really, really liked it, but I struggled with it. And if you read it, you'll know what I mean. I also read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. It was so good. It was so funny. It was like I could hear it. Like, I was listening to it via audiobook but I could like hear it in Hank's voice most of the time. Like there's one chapter in the audiobook that I downloaded that's like narrated by Hank, or like a couple chapters or something. But the whole thing, I was like, this is Hank. Like, I've watched too much of Vlogbrothers to like be like, this is not Hank. And there were so many like nods to Nerdfighteria in it, and I loved it. It was like the main character, I related to her so much. It like started off the first chapter, I was like, this is me. This is me. She's exactly the way I am. Things go very differently for her. I hope that never happens to me. But she's kind of like this design student, and her friend does a lot of video stuff, and there's this weird sculpture that lands in front of like the Chipotle in New York City. And she calls her friend, it's like 2 in the morning. She's like, hey, you need to come over here and film this because it's amazing and beautiful and very unexplainable. Like, it was just such a random sighting. And so they record it, and it becomes this huge viral video. How that kind of spirals their lives, and what happens when they realize that their sculpture is exactly like the one in New York City and all the major cities of the world, and what the suspicions are around those. Like, it is science fiction in a way I had not anticipated going into it, because I didn't really even read any synopsises. I didn't look at any reviews. I just saw that there was a book by Hank Green, and I was like, yes, thank you very much. So, which is kind of a fun way to go into it, because I was like, oh my gosh, like every turn I was just like, what is happening? And I really loved it. 5 out of 5. I really hope he makes more books. I know that wasn't his like original career path thing, but I loved it so much, and it was so fun, and it was very different from this kind of thing that John Green puts out, which I also love. But like having that extra little bit of funny, and this wouldn't probably happen in real life ever type of thing was really, really cool, and I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. I'm hoping to get back to official book reviews soon. I have 2 books that I feel like I'm ready to review, and that's really exciting. I'm so excited to get back into this and like start doing all the review stuff again. Yeah. Thanks for watching. My name's Caitlin. Bye!